I am. And speaking of the car choices, I actually want to pick your brain, TKs. Which is
Hmm.
the larger surprise to you in terms of cars on this grid, the 4Cs or the Corvettes?
I saw a bunch of people use the Corvette, and I actually changed to using the Corvette as well. It actually does really well around here and isn't so terrible in the rain. I think I'm always surprised when I see the 4C in Group 3. It just doesn't seem to get used. I did use it a bit back at
And here we
Monza, and
go.
I enjoyed it. And
We're
we're
off.
off. Is anybody going to make a move into turn one? It's not the best idea, but sometimes you got to do it. And Vetterdan, ooh, late on the brakes.
There was a little bit
Ooh,
of argy-bargy going into Nicky Lauda curve, which is turn one. As they head up towards Ramus, is this going to be a little dicier? I know it is a very, very favorite spot to do a dive bomb. Let's go and take a look at the replay real quick. Let's see what happened here. Okay, a little bit of bumping, but that appeared to be netcode, no contact whatsoever. So I think it's just PD being PD. But as we jump back on board with Varadan, it seems Turbo has a half-second penalty coming up into Schlossgold. So will Vetterdam wait and just overtake at the penalty line? Will he try and get a overtake done through Roush or Verth? It's a guessing game, but honestly, I'd say just stay behind Turbo while you can because you're gonna get the position anyway. Unless maybe Turbo scrubbed off too much speed, he might be able to get an overtake done sooner than anticipated and get P7 back, and then focus on the time ahead. Now, I know TK, you and Leo are both racing in this for Split 2. TK, so I'm glad to see you back in the saddle. How much practice did you guys put in for this race? We'll start with you, TKs. Ooh,
Uh,
Vetterdam's probably going to get a half-second penalty right there. Carry on, sorry.
Indeed. I didn't put a lot. I put some, more than I usually do. And ended up switching cars this morning. I was going to use the Ferrari, did a couple practice races in the Ferrari, then did one practice race in the Corvette and was so much faster that I was like, all right, here we go. So I did a little bit. I'm not usually one to practice. So yeah. How about you, Leo?
I actually didn't do a lot of practice either. I wanted to test a theory of can I go in dead cold, and well, we'll see how that goes. I maybe have done a couple hours altogether.
Drivers in Split 2, please watch yourself in the braking zones as Leo has no idea what he's doing, has no practice, and will be a rolling hazard on the circuit. Speaking of hazards, it looks like Lyric almost became a hazard to Paradox coming into the braking zone into Schlossgold. But luckily there was no real harm done, so everybody can carry on racing as usual. Now, Salamander, I also am surprised to see you not taking part in this. Do you feel like just giving the commentary a try? Were you not feeling Red Bull Ring? What's the situation there?
Yeah, me and Red Bull Ring just don't get along very well. And
Fair enough.
I had explained earlier with the way the points system works in this series, only 4 of your races count. So I was always planning to sit out 1 or 2. This seemed like a good one for me to sit out.
And not a bad time to give yourself a bye week. Now, as we come across the line, it looks like the fastest laps are starting to mellow out a little bit. Jorge Sr. with a 129.059, so very respectable time indeed. And it looks like the grid's still staying pretty bunched up. So I am definitely glad to see everybody putting in the hustle, that effort, trying to get as many points as possible. Now, unfortunately, I am being summoned to pertinent matters, so I must leave you all. But for the remainder of the broadcast, TK, Leo, Sal, you guys do a fantastic job. You guys are all excellent commentators in your own right. And if y'all need anything, just let me know. Enjoy the show, everybody. God bless. Good night.
Thanks for stopping in, Tune.
Indeed. Thanks, Toon. We always love having you, bud. And it looks
Indeed.
like what he was saying. We got everybody from P3 all the way to the back, really close, and then we got Jorge and Racer having their own race out front. As we see PH Jersey with a half-second penalty. The track limits here, they're killer. They're a killer.
Oh
We see
man.
that in any of the race series, F1, DTM, any of the Porsche Cups, any of those times where they race here. Track limits is always an issue. As we look even further back, very tight as P. Choi is trying to make a move there on Rowdy and Root. I like Root and the NSX, Choi and C-Dubs in the Supra as well. Putting all the pressure, using the slipstream. In my opinion, turn 1 is not the place to make a move just because you really need all that exit speed to get up the hill, and it's much better to try to wait until turn 2 or 3 to make your move. It's best to back off, go ahead and take turn 1, and then use that exit speed to the best of your ability. As a like Rowdy is catching up pretty close to Root, not close enough to make a move. But C-Dubs is able to get in on the inside of P. Choi as they race down the hill. And this is that awkward downhill braking zone that you were talking about, Leo. Trail braking is key here. If you can't trail brake, this turn doesn't work for you, as C-Dub is able to complete the move on the inside. One cool thing about that turn is you can make a move around the outside as well. It's not just the inside that has the advantage. You can carry a little more speed and get them on the exit. As we join the leaders here with Jorge and Racer 51, only a half a second lead there on Racer 51. So Racer 51 staying in touch, staying in the tow as we start lap 5. So we have maybe 3-4 laps before we got a pit for tires. I know I found once that heavy rain started, based on my pace, depending where I was on the track, I had about a lap and a quarter before it got too wet. So depending on where you are and when the rain starts, you might be able to do one extra lap than those further behind, or you might have to pit earlier because of where you are on the track. So sometimes being way out front has its advantage, but sometimes it can be a disadvantage if the rain comes at the wrong time. As we go back to Shaggy, who has a gaggle of Porsches behind him, really wanting to get by, and Paradox with the penalty, going for maybe a move around the outside.
Yep. Maybe.
Nope, he just got to hold on. Ooh! And a tank slapper, but he holds it. Impressive.
Excellent.
And with that penalty, he's going to lose positions, but he wants to lose as few as possible. And I got to say, I love that Gulf livery. But, man, that's a lot of pressure there on Shaggy. What are you thinking, Leo?
Yeah, man. It's you got 2 Porsches breathing down your neck. You got Paradox and Lyric and Vetter Dan back there. I mean, the pressure is on him. Hopefully you can maybe not look in the rearview mirror and just keep driving. Sometimes that's the only thing you can do, is not even pretend like they're there and just drive like you should.
Right, and that's where
picked up a half-second penalty for his troubles.
Indeed, that's where the argument of what view you use. Do you use the view that gives you the rear view mirror, or the view that doesn't? I like to be able to see what's going on, but also you do get caught looking in that mirror versus when you use the hood cam. You don't have, or if you're in VR, you don't quite have that distraction. But yeah, Lyric ran wide there right before the final corner as he goes purple here on the 6th lap. But if Paradox can stay close, which it looks like he will, is going to swap back positions with Lyric. What are you thinking there, Salamander, as you watch these guys go around the track?
I'm loving that we've got this train of cars going. Haven't seen anybody totally bin it yet, so everyone's still in the race here. Everyone's got a chance to make up some spots, and I know we harp on this a lot, that this is so much different from the daily races. I mean, we're just watching some good battles all the way at the back of the pack. Just really good driving, really good quality drivers here. This is fun to see.
I agree 100%. And while I was practicing this morning in one of Papa's lobbies, shout out to Papa's House of Games, the proprietor of PHG, another person we need to thank for allowing these awesome races to go on. Is there was some contact in one of the practice races, and everybody was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, look out! Oh, hey, how joking and having fun." And he pointed out, he goes, "If this was as Rick Shear goes on the inside on turn 1, that was he made the apex, it looked like, and he's going to keep on going. We don't know if Paradox is going to get a penalty from that. Looks like he is safe. And that was an aggressive move, and you can see he doesn't quite have the speed up the hill. Let's look at this again. Dives up the inside. He does make the apex and continues on. Wow. I mean, it was aggressive, but I think it was fair. There was a gap, and he went for it. But you saw going up the hill, he didn't have the exit speed, and that was allowing Lyric to stay tight on him. As now, who do we have there in the fourth? That's Fast Cougar making a play here, trying to go up the inside of Paradox. And Fast Cougar capitalizes. Oh, my goodness. Paradox is falling backwards. He's not giving up, though. Fighting as hard as he can. He's going to have to settle in P7 as Turbo has overtaken Vetterdan. And here comes the rain.
The rain.
So do they box now, or do they? I think the leaders are coming in. They're not going to risk it. We're going to see everybody pit here. The only person who has to worry is who is back there, unfortunately, in last place. They might struggle to make that pit entry by the time they get there. But everybody's going to come in.
Oh,
Turbo stays out. That's a risk. He's taking a gamble. I don't know if he'd get in or if he thinks he can make it all the way around, but looking at that moisture meter, as we like to call it, it is up into that inners. Yeah, this is going to be a painful lap. And I think we saw somebody come out on the wets. We see a mix of intermediates and wets. The heavy. Oh yeah, he can't even get it. This is. We're sorry, Turbo. Don't know what happened. If you got blocked going into the pits or just thought you could make it. He also plays in VR. I don't know how much that has to do with being able to going on with the weather. But we now have Jorge in first and Racer 51 in second. Racer on the full wets. Right now, the moisture meter is at the intermediate level, but I do believe it will get up into that top third, giving the full wets a good time. But what I saw in practicing was once it starts drying out, those intermediates definitely have an advantage. So I think with the gap Racer 51 has, he's going to be okay from anybody behind. As we look here with Fast Cougar also on the wets. Ooh, a lot of slippy and slidey. You got to be careful. I assume most of these drivers are going to be using their traction control if they weren't already in the wet. Salamander, what is your feeling on wet weather driving in these Group 3 cars?
It's tough. Traction control is almost required unless you're a World Tour driver. But you certainly have to dial it back significantly from what you were doing in the dry weather. And now that we are into that full wet condition, we're going to see who can restrain themselves the most, because that's really what it's going to come down to. It's always sort of a mental thing where you're worried about, God, I feel like I'm going so slow. But you can end up making up a lot of time. The wet weather is a period where those that know what they're doing can make up a lot of time over those that don't quite adapt. So we'll see who can adapt the best.
As they go too wide into turn 2. Looks like Fast Cougar making a move, but a switchback by Lyric. And this is where getting on the throttle too quickly can really hurt you, as Lyric smartly just backs out of it and lets Vetterdan by. That is a tricky spot to get on the throttle, even in the dry, but especially in the wet. And then this downhill, you got gravity working against you. It's a later apex, and you got the gravel on the outside as we see Vetterdan. Ooh, and almost Jersey and Paradox. Very, rejoined okay. Everybody was able to get by and keep on moving, but that's easy to happen. And in the practices I was in, I saw that happen with the leaders. You know, they're out there doing their thing, and next thing you know, they're spinning around and the rest of the pack is catching up. But I'm loving this midfield battle for really that we're seeing from Shaggy Doo all the way back to Vetterdan. Is really, really aggressive. Anything can happen, and it just takes one slip up and you're falling backwards. I do find in the wet sometimes racing with other cars around you makes it harder because you are pushing, like you were saying, Salamander. You're you're wanting to brake that little bit later. You're wanting to get on the throttle that little bit sooner. And you got to show some self-control, as it looks like fifth place has now really pulled away there from the back group. We're getting another little split of cars as third through fifth here are pushing it up the hill, slipping and sliding everywhere.
Everybody's slipping and sliding.
Yeah, it's so
Everywhere,
tough.
my
Like you
goodness.
said, racing around the other drivers, it's when you're hanging on for dear life to your car. Sometimes just to keep it on the track, to try to avoid others, is just that much more difficult in the rain. Oh, see Rick Shear making a move on the inside. Oh, he
Get
might
the
be able to make
power
it
down.
stick.
He
You
made
can, and Rick's on the intermediates, able to get the grip, and that's where the Porsche has its advantage in the wet
Yep.
over these FR cars like the Vet or the GTR. You can just get on the power a little bit sooner. You got the motor over those rear wheels, pushing it down, and it really does play to its advantage. But in other corners,
We saw.
I found that the Corvette was really able to do well. So we'll see if Jersey's able to push back here against Rick as they come around. And that may be a penalty for Rick. It was awfully close running wide there. We will see momentarily. I think he got away with it. Yes, he did. He's safe.
Yeah. I saw
As he-
Vetter Dan in the background back there. Looked like he had a little bit of an issue. Came around the corner a little too quick.
Yep. He's got a.
Yeah.
Oof. And
Yeah.
P. Choi is all over him. He's going to serve that 1 second penalty at the end of the next lap. So if he can put a little bit of distance here, he might be able to hold on to P10. But what a roller coaster of a race Vetterdan's been having. He's moved up and back and all over the place. Ooh, squiggly. And he makes it out okay onto the final straight there.
Holding on for dear life.
I want to pose this question to y'all. Do you find it hard once the track is starting to dry up to go back to that full race speed?
Absolutely.
Yes. I was
Okay.
messing with that today because your brake marker, every lap, your brake marker moves a little bit further,
Yep.
a little bit closer to where it is when it's completely dry. And sometimes you push it a little too far and then you overshoot the corner. Or if you're racing with somebody and you hit it a little early behind you, they're just going to go into the back of you if they're thinking their brake marker's in a different spot. So it does pose some challenges as the track dries out. How about you, Salamander?
Yeah, it's really always a mental challenge for me that once the rain comes, to get back up to full speed in the dry, it seems like such a slow crawl. I tend to continue to be more conservative, probably longer than I should, and I find myself getting past as the track does start to dry out.
And Shaggy Doo is falling back to fifth. And that puts Lyric up into third. Not quite sure what happened there, but that is unfortunate. But the pack is so close. It makes sense. Like we were saying, one minor error and boom, we lost some places. And Rick Shear with 1.5 second penalties. He does have a good gap on Jersey, but that's going to slow him down a lot. Luckily, the penalty line here is right before a braking zone. So it's not as damaging as if they put it, like, say, right here on this long straight. So we'll see how much that affects him as he goes into the penalty zone at the end of this lap. So they climb up the hill. And one of the things I started doing when I was practicing was really using my lap times on the right-hand side of the screen as a gauge of my progression as the track dried out. You know, you're a second quicker, and then the next lap you're a 1.5 seconds quicker, and kind of using that as a gauge of, am I pushing it too hard? This is working. Okay, this next lap I can push that much harder, as a way to kind of see how hard you need to push. But you know, we all want to be brave and be the fastest, but sometimes being conservative, taking it easy, benefits you in the long run, especially when the person in front of you makes a mistake. As they now come around, we are about to start lap 13 of 18.
Yep.
The leaders are coming around that final corner. What a gap they have, 15.5
Wow.
seconds to P3. and they are just commanding this race. They can afford to make a mistake. Jorge can't if he wants to keep the lead, but Racer definitely could afford a mistake and still hang on to that P2. As we go back here with Vetterdan still trying to get that P10 back. Yeah, this is that's an interesting place to go for it. Can he make it stick? He
You
gets
got
on
the
the
power
gas,
to do it.
and P. Choi is technically nope. He couldn't get on the throttle quick enough. It was a value. He's going again. He's tired of that P11. He wants back in the top 10. A little contact compromises his speed on the uphill, but it looks like he's able to make that move done. Does P. Choi fight back going into turn 2? I think Vetterdan is far enough ahead if he hits his marks, and that's good. And that's allowed Root to catch up. What have you noticed, Leo, when chasing some people as they start battling? Does that entice you to go quicker?
It does. Honestly, like if I start seeing people battle in front of me, I know I could probably either stay at the speed that I am and wait for either a mistake to be made, or put the throttle down a little more and try to catch up to them to see if I can capitalize on that battling. Because when you're battling someone, and we all know it's going to slow you down no matter what. You could be this person ever, but if you're having to keep someone off your tail or defend corners, you're going to go a little slower. But now in the rain, that's a different story. I would keep my distance a little bit more, just to give way in case somebody makes a huge mistake.
Indeed. And Salamander, I'm curious, have you ever, or do you tend to maybe back out of a fight knowing that it's slowing you down, or are you one of those that just can't let it go and you got to stay in there till the battle's done?
Oh, the latter. Not proud of that. I tend to do I've got to get around this guy. I've got to get this position. There are times where I do consciously tell myself, it's like, just wait, back out of this corner, live to fight another day. And typically that's how it works. You end up getting into a straight or onto a straightaway or somewhere else where it's easier to make the pass. But there are times where you're just mired behind somebody and it's like, oh my God, would you just pull over and let me go? I'm faster than you. And that gets frustrating. But
I've seen a caveat to that for you, Sal. If RJ's behind you.
He is so patient. He just waits for me to make a mistake because he knows I will.
I don't know. You two go at it like there's no tomorrow. I watched y'all go at it the other day. I was like, I'm getting flashbacks of NRL all over again.
And I think that's fun about these races, as we all, we've all gotten to know each other pretty well. We've raced against each other a lot. We've done a lot of practices. It makes these races, you start to see, it's like, in like any race series, you start to see your opponent's strengths and weaknesses. You know what they're likely to do, what they're not likely to do, and it makes for some really fun racing. And like we've said, we're getting such clean races, good battles. We've seen aggressive moves, but they've all been fair in my opinion. As we saw, is this Rick? Who is this that we're on board with?
That's Rick that we're on board with. Looks like he got onto the wet patch there and just lost a little bit of control, which gave Fast Cougar the chance to get by him and lost time to Shaggy, unfortunately.
Indeed, and Shaggy's starting to put pressure on Lyric. He wants that P3 back. Good on him for moving back up through the field like this. Yeah, after he made his little mistake and fell back. But Lyric seems to be... This is where Lyric is going to start to struggle. The track is now drying out. He is on the full wets. What tire is Shaggy on? Do we know?
Intermediate.
Shaggy's on the inter, so I think we're going to see advantage Shaggy for these final laps as he starts to close down. Because I noticed it. I did one race in with the wet tires, and once it starts drying out, you lose so much speed, especially accelerating and in the braking. It's just not as quick as the intermediates are. Leo, did you try out both tires, or did you?
I actually did. I did actually. I tried the wets for a few practice runs, and I was like, this
Ooh.
paradox go off. He got too confident in that corner and gave it too much throttle and kicked the back end out and did a 360 no scope.
360 no scope indeed, and while the track is drying out, those curbs are still soaked. So look, yep, he gets really wide on those wet curbs, under braking, and just loses it. Oh, you hate to see it. And then it's super slick off the track there. So getting back on is even harder as he falls back to P10 behind Vetterdan. Just a few laps left. And are we going to get some lap traffic maybe? There's a chance depending on what happens here in these final laps, because Jorge and Racer 51 are already on the way up the hill, I believe, going into turn 2. So they're coming up on those back markers. So that'll make this that much more interesting.
Yes,
for sure. Oh no, I was looking at the radar wrong. Okay, they're about to start their 17th lap. I was looking at them as if they were the last place drivers, not the first place drivers.
They do have one person ahead of them,
but somebody.
Yeah, they're a full straight ahead. But they could come into play.
Especially when you look at these lap times that they're putting in now that the track's drying out. They're getting down into the low 30s, the mid to low 30s.
Looks like Rowdy was able to get around Fast Cougar. How about Rowdy here? Watching him here lately, and he started dead last in this, and he's up into P7 halfway through the field. We're getting down to the closing laps, so not a lot more positions to gain, but pretty nice comeback for him.
Indeed, and that's the car that I originally was going to use. I did some practice in it, and I definitely liked it in the wet, and we're seeing it work for him here. It was interesting. We saw everybody pit at the same time except for Turbo, which was unfortunate. Rick Shear sending it, and yep, he was too late on the brakes. Gonna have to give those positions back, and probably a penalty as well. As Shaggy and Lyric are side by side. Let's take a look as they come up the hill. He's thinking, okay, I got the inside. I can get 2 for 1. 2 for 1 special, and no, not quite. Unfortunately for Rick. But luckily he didn't spin. It's so easy to spin right there.
It looked like Lyric was pushing him into the corner there.
Indeed, and Shaggy has gotten up into 3rd, and Lyric has now fallen back to 5th and has Jersey all over him.
Oh, we got Rick 4 guys
all
there.
All over the back of Shaggy. We got a
4
almost. Oh no!
Oh,
and Lyric gets a bump. It looks like. Oh, thank you for ghosting. That helped Rowdy out a lot. Rowdy would have died as well as. Oh, that is so unfortunate for Lyric. Let's see if there was a little bump from behind. Yes, it. That's hard to say. It could be netcode with Jersey right there going into that left-hander. I don't know. What did you see there, Salamander?
Yeah, it looked like Jersey might have just gotten into him a little bit at the end, but once you start getting down to the end of the race here, it's go time. So, might have been that Lyric got on the brakes a little earlier than he expected, but
yes,
that's racing.
Indeed, it is. It is. It definitely didn't look intentional. It didn't look like he was like, I'm just going to push you off. It was tight. They were both trying to get into that turn, and they were just really close to each other. And it's hard not to make contact as Rick is pushing his hardest to get that P3 away from Shaggy. And it looks like we are going to see some lap traffic here with Jorge. He already got past them. Got past C-Dubs and put a car between him and Racer 51. He's going to be safe from Racer 51 and going to be finishing. And unfortunately for C-Dubs, they will be finishing this race a lap early. As he comes around the penultimate to the final corner. Even if he gets a penalty, it doesn't matter. Jorge drove a perfect race. Not a foot wrong.
Indeed.
And wow, what a performance. Racer 51 in a car I didn't expect to see coming across the line for P2. Rick Shear gets ahead of Shaggy in the final lap. Takes P3. Ooh. What a race by... that was a roller coaster. For how many positions was Rick in during this race? At least 6.
Lost count.
with quite a few
Rowdy with a
penalties.
P5.
Oh wow.
Wow. Very nice. Paradox coming across. Paradox had a big spin. Lyric had a spin. It looks like Jersey probably gave that position back there to Lyric. And then we got Root. I didn't even realize Turbo kept with it. Good for him for somehow getting back to the pits
Yes.
and
indeed.
finishing this race. I think most people would have just quit, if I'm honest. And here we go. P. Choi, P13. What would you have done, Leo?
With
If you were Turbo, would you have quit after you came
No.
off there, or would you try to get back?
I try to get back. At a certain point, you're like, okay, well, I'm just here to have fun now. So that's pretty much where I'd be at. Yeah, it's disheartening, but I mean, maybe you can. It's a long race, so maybe you could pick some spots up, like we saw. He picked back up to what, 12th, correct?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's always a possibility. Kind of quitting on it, you know. I mean, if it was a short, like 5-lap race, okay, then yeah.
Sure.
But with a longer race, you can get away with keep going attitude.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you never know what's going to happen. Well, we kind of knew it was going to happen up front with Jorge and Racer 51 with their commanding lead. But after that, it was a toss-up. We saw so much. Salamander, will you take us through these results?
Sure thing, T-Case. We got Jorge Sr. with a dominant performance, finishing at P1. Congratulations to him. Followed not too far behind by Racer 51, who also had a dominant performance. Those 1-2 guys were way out ahead the whole race. Third place, hard fought by Rick Shear in his Porsche. P4, we got Shaggy Doo in his Supra. And how about Rowdy in P5, coming up from last to 5th? That was a heck of a run by him. P6, we got Fast Cougar QC in the Alpha 4C. P7, we got Vetter Dan in the Corvette, followed by Paradox in P8 in the 911. And then rounding out the second half of the field, we got Lyric in P9. He unfortunately had that spin right at the end. He seemed to have a little bit of help from Jersey, who finished right behind him in P10. Kudos to Jersey. We think he may have given that spot back. That's some good sportsmanship. P11, we got Root in the lone GTR in this split. And P12, we got Turbo in his Corvette, followed by P. Choi in P13 in the Supra, and C-Dubs finishing us off in P14. Unfortunately, one lap down.